Hi guys, I wanted to jump on today and do a quick video to go through internal representational systems and really explain what it is I talk about when I talk about this and give these little nuggets of information to you guys so that you can understand them. And if we'd like to, we can roll this out to the audience because we're talking about, mental health and relationships, and ultimately communication will come up in that a lot over the next few weeks with your mental health awareness, our group pages, board, and weekly podcast. So I wanted to get on and explain a little bit of this today because I think it's key in how we relate to relationships and communication. Knowing what major rep system, for short, as I like to call it, we work off of is going to help us understand ourselves so much better, but how to guide others, how to deal with us better, which is going to bridge the gap and save us conflicts, missed communications, all kinds of escalations. So, and then also understanding there are several different types. We are all not the same. We sometimes go through life assuming that everybody is the same as us, but they are not. So if you are in a relationship with someone who is not the same internal representational system as you, you need to understand what rep system they are working off of. And they need to understand yours, because communication is going to be it's going to need a little bit more work in order to make it work. So I think this is integral to explain so that everyone will understand it and we'll all ultimately grow by the end of the day. But really and truly, before we break out into these specific types, I just want to speak to the fact that our nervous system and our mind experience the world through our senses. And if anybody's ever heard of VACOG, right? So I've got it mapped out here. Visual, meaning you see things, right? Everything's absorbed visually through sight, auditorily through sound, kinesthetically through touch or feeling, olfactory through smell, scent, gustatory through taste, and a subcategory, or as I like to kind of call it, a hybrid, is auditory digital. Auditory digital is really interesting because it can run off of any of the other major rep systems, but it spawns an internal thought process, self-talk or dialogue in our head. So it's a two-part process, a little more complex. Okay, so we've mapped all of these out here. These are the major types. So technically there are 6, okay? Major different types. And this is how we gather our information that goes in, and ultimately we're getting 2.3 million bits of data per second. That's what we're absorbing every single second since conception, as we're on this earth, experiencing things that our mind has to filter. It has to filter and sort through our experience and decide what to do with it. Our brain is basically a big supercomputer, okay? And language and other types of, whether verbal or nonverbal communication, are what and how we store experience. So this is what gives it meaning to us. Do you ever think about having specific memories and maybe you pull them up based on what sensory experience it meant the most to you at that time? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later when we speak to how do we figure out what rep system someone's working off of quickly. There's a really quick, easy trick to that by recalling a memory. So, but we get things, we store them in pictures. Some are visual, we store them as sounds, maybe a song. We ever hear a song on the radio and it takes you right back to a memory. Feelings, kinesthetic feelings, right? Whether they were emotional feelings or whether they were actual physical, literal touch feelings, right? That's how we store this information. Smells can take you right back, right? And get you to the access of the information that's stored within that sensory information that you took in at that point in time. Taste, same way, right? Do you ever eat like mom's spaghetti? And it takes you right back to those feelings and those memories. Everybody's got a favorite food or something like that, and that's probably what it's related to. And then self-talk. Self-talk can itself store and file away certain experiences for us. So, and this is how our brain is going to access things, and this is what it's going to work off of. So understanding that this is the way in which we work from the start is really, really important, and understanding that we are not all the same. So Knowing the way our mind works is incredibly important so that we can help others understand our process and why we go through and do things the way that we do, and understanding others so that conversely, we can give them that same kind of compassion and empathy and understanding that if maybe sometimes they're doing things that might not make sense to us per se, it may be because they're on a different rep system and they're accessing and using information in a different way. We can figure that out though, and we can get into rapport with them and relate better with them by knowing more information. So having this understanding is key. I think it's important to talk to, and we'll pop up an image, which will go a little bit farther into what, more so than what I have mapped out here, the communication model, which really shows how we take in sensory information. So it's kind of like a face, and it sees and it hears and it senses. So it's getting from all the different sensory acuity. That information is going into the mind, right? All those bits of data per second, and it has to be processed. So our conscious mind is deleting, distorting, and generalizing it and filing it away, doing its job, okay? Our internal rep system and our mind filter and create our reality. That's a rabbit hole to go down another day. So, but our conscious mind may delete, distort, and generalize. And this is why sometimes we lose chunks or pieces of certain memories and things like that, because that's how the mind sorts it. If it doesn't necessarily deem it as incredibly important, then it may delete, distort, and generalize. It's also going to form our representation of the information that we took in. So our understanding of it is going to be based in that. This is going to determine what state we are currently in as far as how we're feeling. Okay? And things such as time, location, mood, right? Values, beliefs, perhaps language, memories, attitude, different things like that are going to also affect and influence what's being done with this information and what state we currently feel like we're in. And so that's going to affect our physiology, how we physically look and feel, okay? So, and ultimately, all of that put together in motion is going to result in our behavior. So this is where it all starts. This is where our behavior ultimately starts. This is also where our internal representation or understanding of things starts. So if we have miscommunications with people, we have to kind of go back to the start and look at what did we take in the first place. Okay? And that behavior is ultimately going to dictate our results in whatever it is that we're going through. So understanding almost like a wheel, right? What points of reference are happening all along the way till we make that full ellipse to get to the results. Understanding then that if we didn't like the result that we got, maybe we need to backtrack it back through that wheel a little bit and look at our process, okay? So it's all important. We're not all the same. So let's talk about specific rep types, okay? First, you have visual, okay? And these are visual people. Whether or not you have a photographic memory, that may or may not mean completely that you are a full visual person. We have a primary and a secondary rep system. So we have one that we work off in a major way and one that we work off of in a minor way, sub to our primary. So visual persons are going to be thinking in pictures, images, flashes, and they're going to perceive things in that way. So the way to relate with someone who is a visual person is to speak in context of things that can be seen, pictured, in any way, shape, or form visually, because that's the language that they're going to understand. They won't understand if you're talking about sound, because they don't hear in sound. They see in picture. So visual persons memorize very easily just by looking at things. So they may scan a book and be able to take a test very easily because all they need to do is look at the information. They can also watch someone doing something and easily replicate it. So they're not going to be distracted by noises as much as perhaps someone that's auditory or working off of sound is. So they'll have different opportunities than others. Visual people also may have trouble remembering. They might get bored by long verbal communication, kind of like me in this right now, except they can see me. And they're interested in how things look. So they may be more into aesthetics and things of that nature. Auditory persons, all right, you're thinking in sound, all right? You're thinking in sound, you're almost thinking in music, right? And these are our individuals that make great musicians, right? Because tonality is everything to them. Tonality, timbre, pace, tempo, all those types of things that influence sound. So if you're auditory, you may be easily distracted by noise if you ever find it hard to concentrate like that. And so there's ways to focus yourself. You can also repeat things back easily that you've heard because you didn't really need to see anything, you didn't need to feel anything, you heard it, you picked it up, boom, and you can spit it right back out. So we love music, right? Anything you can hear, radio, podcasting perhaps, different things like that. And tone of voice and the words are going to be very important because that's what these people pick up on, okay? Moving to kinesthetic, all right, is thinking and feelings, whether it is emotional feelings, internal feelings, or in literal physical touch, literal physical feeling and touch. So they may be one or the other. They may be solely one versus the other. They may be a combination of both. Everybody's a little bit different in this category. So, and some can just mentally relate to it as long as it relates to feeling in general. So, but they have to talk slowly and breathy. They like physical rewards, okay? They like touching. They memorize things by doing or actually physically having to walk through it, having to do it. If you're a hands-on learner, you may be a kinesthetic, okay? And they'll be interested in something that feels right. Many times these type of people are big on gut feelings, right? And they live intuitively, kind of speaking that way, like I go by my gut. And it's ultimately because they connect with feeling. That is the rep system that they run off of. So using language and appealing to them in their rep system, and also being able to give them the rewards and the things that they seek is going to be the validation that they need, right? So for somebody who is super kinesthetic, a hug is going to be everything. Whereas simply just saying to them, you did a great job today, is not going to make an impact. See the difference? Great. Auditory digital, okay, I'm going to skip olfactory and gustatory because these are minor systems. So we're talking about major systems. Majority of individuals will fall under one of the 4 major systems, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital, okay? Very rarely are you going to have somebody only operating off of smell or taste. So the major rep systems are the ones we're going to focus on. Auditory digitals. Hi, my name's Amy and I'm an auditory digital. I'm auditory digital primary and I'm auditory secondary. So I'm very heavily based in sound, right? And I have my own internal thought process. So we're not crazy, although I know what you're thinking. And it's not all wrong, but we're not really crazy. We just have an internal dialogue. Not everyone does. Not everybody has their own voice in their head or my own voice and other people's voices going on in their heads at any given time, talking about stuff, just having conversation, just analyzing, right? Beating it back and forth, things like that. We do. So we perceive information from all the other rep systems. So I can visually see things and replicate them and reproduce them, pull up images and memories visually, auditorily, big time. I can hear sounds, I can hear things, repeat it straight back to you, memorize songs, keep stuff going in the background and be able to decipher between. I can tell you which dog is barking on the other end of the house, all kinds of cool stuff. So also very kinesthetic, very much about physical touch, feelings, intuitively being connected to touch and feeling. So we are a hybrid. I guess you could say we're kind of complicated. A hybrid of most of the other rep systems, but also that we have this internal dialogue that is stimulated by things. So, when I see something, I do see it, but then I say to myself in my head, wonder what about that, right? And then I boil that information down. And we confirm to ourselves in our head. So we are our own verification. So someone that's auditory digital, and I think this is important to kind of speak to, some children as they're growing and developing could be deemed as having special needs or learning disabilities, but pump the brakes, okay? People that are auditory digital, because they have a two-part internal process, we need extra time, A, to process, but B, to respond. So if we haven't responded to you immediately, it's not that there's something wrong. It's not that we don't know how to. It's that we have to process information, and we're processing a little bit more than everybody else. So be patient with us. And that's the biggest thing. Someone that's auditory digital needs a lot of patience. We also need some quiet time in order to go through our process. We have to think extensively before we can either act, verbally respond, and take action into things. So whether we're falling in love or purchasing something, there's different strategies to all of that. Auditory digitals have extra steps. So it's a lot lengthier process for us than for some of the other rep systems. And that just takes some understanding. So if you're with someone, this is why this is key, because you can help them really understand you. If I had somebody who talked really, really fast and never gave me a moment to respond and didn't give me that time to go through my process and wasn't patient enough with me, is that somebody that I really want to get into a relationship with? Is it going to be conducive? Is it going to end in the happiest result? It probably won't, because they're not understanding me as an intellect and what my major rep system is. So having this information for ourselves is great, because we can help others understand us much, much better. And we can understand others also. So it's really important to kind of know that. And what I'll do is give an email recap that'll map out different bits of information for each of the 4 major types, because that's the people that we're talking about here today. And give an example. Give examples of language that'll work better for them. Right? If you're speaking to somebody who's a visual person and you say, I hear what you said. That visual person literally just skipped over everything, because they don't hear things, they see them. If you say, I see what you mean, then they're going to get it, and it's going to sink in a lot better, right? Or if you say, picture this, they're like, oh, okay, I'm listening, right? If you're talking to somebody who's auditory digital, then you have to talk about the thought process or the experience of it, right? I understand, right? Or thinking, learning, anything that is going to speak to that internal self-talk, okay? If you got somebody who's kinesthetic and you say, did you see? No, because they can't see. They're not in their visual. They're in their kinesthetic. So you have to say, I really grasp the concept that you were just talking about. Grasp, like, they get that. It's physical, it's a feeling, gives them a feeling when you say it. They know what it feels like to grasp onto something, right? So this is the biggest part that you can take away from all this. And so we'll post up a little cheat sheet for each of the 4 major rep systems so that you guys can all benefit from it and use it, right? Use it in your day-to-day. It's going to bring you a lot more peace and understanding with your partners, with people that you interact with. You can test this and trial this with your friends and family, and you're going to have a lot better communication. Understanding and communication are the keys in great relationships. The more understanding that you have or strive to have, and the better you work your communication out to be, the more successful you're going to be over the long run, because things do change, life happens, lots of stuff comes up and comes at us, but our major rep system is always going to be there. So if we do have certain fundamental understandings of things like this from the start, it's going to equal much more success in the long run. So we'll put out those little cheat sheets of things. And just real quick to wrap up, the way to quickly and effectively elicit this information, without having to give a little quiz. We do have a little 5-question quiz that you can do where you can really find out deeply and effectively what major and primary and secondary rep system you are. But a quick, simple way to find out this information is just to simply ask about a happy memory, okay? So I want you to think of a happy memory, all right? Think of a happy memory right now and go ahead and pull it up in your mind. Okay, and make it specific. I need it to be a specific happy memory and a snapshot of it. Okay, so at one particular moment in time, pull up that happy memory, picture it. Got it? Okay, I want you to look into it and tell me the very first sensory experience that you're experiencing stepping into that happy memory. Was it something you saw, something you felt, or something you heard? Or was it something that you thought? And right off the bat, subconsciously, you're going to answer that question immediately. And that is most likely your major rep system, because it's going to be the very first thing that you notice about things. The first thing you notice when you walk into a room, the first thing you notice when you pull up a memory and you start to think about it. So was it something you saw? Was it the colors, the landscape? Was it something you felt? The wind rushing by, water, rain, whatever it was? Was it something you heard? Was there noises? Was it something you thought or you were thinking, right? This is the best day ever. So that's a quick and really easy way to elicit what exactly someone's internal rep system is. And you can do that kind of in conversation if you're, just quick enough and just roll them right through it. It took me about 2 seconds there to go through that with you guys. And that's going to help you appeal to them. So if you find out that you're dealing with somebody who's visual, speak to them in the terms that they'll understand. Speak to them in terminology, language, and examples as if you're talking to them about pictures and images. Okay? If it's auditory, sound. Okay? Kinesthetic, feeling, whether emotional or literal. Auditory, digital, self-talk. Thought process, learning, understanding. Okay? I hope this helped today, guys. Take care.